Hi, honey, how are you? Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, I'm Teknikolour. I built a cute little cottage-style home in Innisgreen, so let's check it out. If I'm being honest, I truly did not know where to put this little cottage because I always gravitate towards the same handful of worlds to build in. It's been a small little goal of mine to try to work on more limited pack builds and build in worlds and on lots that I haven't really built on before. You know, give everyone its own chance to shine. There's legitimately no reason why I always need to build in Santa Sequoia, Copperdale, or Brindleton Bay. You're allowed to have favorites and want to build there, but I definitely want to challenge myself to push myself out of my comfort zone and try new things. So this time, I decided to build in Innisgreen, the world that came with Enchanted by Nature. This pack released last summer, and when it did, I was convinced that I'd be building a ton in this world, especially because I really like this particular neighborhood, Coast of Admore, probably because it's the least fairy-like, and there's a pretty shipwreck. Yet, somehow, I've really only built in Innisgreen a few times, and not once was it in this particular neighborhood. I thought it was time. So this lot, 1 Maury Shores Road, became the location for this little cottage. I also tried to make sure this build didn't use too much of the fairy items. But towards the end of the video, you'll see I decorate 1 bedroom with a bit more of that fairy look. I couldn't help it. It was like I needed to add more fairy sort of stuff. So that room is kind of meant for a teenager or something that is intrigued by fairies and maybe wants to become a fairy themselves. Who knows? The overall shape and floor plan for this build was simple too. It's basically a rectangle, which I do tend to avoid just basic rectangles with my builds. With 2 rooms, I planned to be bedrooms. Other than that, I knew I could fit in a bathroom for the primary bedroom, as well as the main bathroom, along with a kitchen and living space. The worst part about this incredibly simple build? The roofing. Don't even ask, because I don't know why I struggled so hard, but I did. I really, truly did. I cut out most of my roofing attempts from this video for timing, but I could not decide on what I wanted it to look like. I think because the overall shape was so simple, it kind of threw me a bit, and therefore I just began to overthink the roofing. I hit a breaking point and asked my boyfriend if he'd look at it when he got home from work. And he did, and spent a couple of minutes and made the roof into exactly what I'd pictured in my head. Not sure why I couldn't let myself make it in the game, but thankfully, Cinnabon Andy came to the rescue. I think I already mentioned, but this is a limited pack build. I wanted to avoid using some of the packs I quite honestly overuse, and so I was determined to find a nice balance here. Since we're building an Innisgreen, obviously we are using Enchanted by Nature, but I didn't really want to use a lot of packs. So I only added in Strangerville and Laundry Day. I think that's a good mixture, right? 1 expansion pack, 1 game pack, and 1 stuff pack, plus the base game. Then by the end of this build, I was so satisfied that it didn't feel like anything had been left out or that I'd missed specific items from other packs. The only thing I did end up changing from what I originally pictured for this build was the overall color scheme. I thought this would be a much darker house, maybe navy siding or something, but this neighborhood is so colorful and pastel. Strangerville actually has a couple of swatches that use yellow and green in similar ways, so I took advantage of that and just ran with it. Figuring out the kitchen was a little bit tricky, just because I was thinking I could have the main bathroom here, near the primary bedroom's ensuite. I thought that I could likely even add a door to the yard as part of that bathroom. Instead of having the kitchen this big, though, I just reduced the size by a few tiles to accommodate a bathroom on the other side, closer to the second bedroom and living area. This way, I was able to make a smaller room for this little room that acts as a kind of mudroom to the outside, eventually. It took me a bit to really figure that space out, but more on that in a moment. Here in the kitchen itself, I did not want to use the kitchen set that comes from Enchanted by Nature because it just feels so fairy coated. Regardless, it was just a bit too whimsical for this build, so I decided to use a base game kitchen set. And this one is actually one of my favorites. I went with green for the color scheme, bringing in some of the look that we'd already decided on for the exterior too. The combination of the yellows and greens in this build are just so stinking cute, I swear. I think a bigger issue I had here was figuring out exactly how to lay out the kitchen. It's not really big enough for an island or anything like that, and unfortunately, there isn't a dining table in this build other than the one outside. Honestly though, that doesn't bother me. Normally it would, but I think that I used the space here pretty well, and the table wasn't a necessity here. Deciding where to put the tall cabinet and the fridge was an issue for me, especially because as of right now, it doesn't appear like I remember to include an oven. So I really hope I remember to add that in later on. I can't remember if I did or not, so it'll be a surprise for the both of us. You know, a while back, there was a time where I put out like 4 or so builds where I forgot to include a refrigerator in each one. Like, how does one do that once, let alone a few times in a row? Anyway, you'll see here that that odd little room becomes a laundry room. I must have always had it in mind to add a space for laundry just because that's what this door is from, Laundry Day. It's such a cute pack that I feel doesn't get nearly enough love, and probably just because doing laundry in the game is legitimately kind of annoying. But the build items and the cast offerings are just so good. I think a lot of people write it off, but I don't know. I like it. Okay, now we're moving on to the kind of heart of the home, the living space. This couch is kind of whimsical, but in a way that doesn't have to be for fairies. So I end up using it more than you'd expect. I'm also pretty positive that I'm using this couch in my current Legacy Sims house. And he's a mermaid living in Tartosa, which doesn't really give off fairy vibes. Just a little self-plug here, but I also stream over on Twitch. I'll drop my link in the description, but no pressure. I know live streams aren't everyone's cup of tea. Every Thursday morning, I play in my Legacy save file, and right now we're on Generation 9, and our next heir only just aged up into a teenager. It's a really good time to start watching because you don't really need to know the whole history of the family, and you'll get to see Marco grow into the thief I've decided he's going to become. What an intro. But seriously, this Legacy challenge has been a lot of fun to play through so far. I actually wrote it with my boyfriend Cinnabon Andy because I had a fair amount of packs that I was familiar with when it came to building, but I knew almost nothing about the gameplay attached to those packs. So this challenge, each generation is basically centered around a specific pack with a world. And it's been an interesting approach to a Legacy save file. I'll put the link to the challenge rules in the description too, if you're interested. We need to write more of the challenge though, because we're starting to run out of generations. Anyways, back to this space. I felt like this room was almost a little too big for the furniture, at least lengthwise. I definitely could have given myself a bit more room between the exterior wall and that front bedroom, but oh well. To help fill in the space, I opted for a desk and happened upon this one. I don't think I have ever used it before, or to be honest, noticed it existed. It's cute though. I like how the edges on this swatch have some of the green. It just felt like it would fit in perfectly. On the other side of the room, I added a bookshelf and some plants. Behind the couch, I added one of those accent tables, and I do this in pretty much all of my builds, which is kind of funny because in my own apartment, I don't have that. My couch is directly against the wall. I've seen some of those long and thin kind of tables that you can put behind a couch. Some even have outlets built into them. I've been wondering if I want to try something like that out, but I've also been trying to convince my boyfriend that we should add French doors to a doorway we have between our entry and our living room. He thinks there isn't enough space though, which he's probably right. He also thinks it'd need to be custom, but I don't think it would. Not that I've ever hung a door where one wasn't before. Just going off of vibes, of course. That's how things work, obviously. At this point, I'm mostly adding clutter to both of the living room and the kitchen. I don't know why I always end up doing this separately, but I do. Like, I'll work on the rooms and then much later in the build, come back and actually decorate them and add clutter. Like, you'd be surprised how long it'll take me to even add wallpaper or flooring. The bedrooms were a bit of a challenge for me. I wanted to design spaces that felt like they were part of this home, but also not using too much of our existing color scheme and stuff where it felt like a showroom or something. I think that's also what prompted me to embrace some of the fairy items for the secondary bedroom. Here, though, I do kind of stick with their yellow and green color scheme. I also have this issue where I tend to overstuff my rooms, but otherwise I feel like they end up looking kind of like a base game build. Or, I don't know, maybe a starter home, which is actually something I should consider building more of. Starter homes. The second bedroom was so much fun to work on. Whereas the parents' room is a bit more basic and could lack character, this room makes up for it. It's like I instantly just chose to use the fairy bed and then it was a slippery slope from there. There's also still a fair amount of yellow in this room, but I wanted a bit more warmth too, so I tried to add in a bit more red. I felt like this room should represent a younger Sim, probably a teen, who maybe doesn't quite fit in with the rest of their family or friends and is exploring why that might be. They, get enchanted by nature. Some of the laundry day items work perfectly here with the wicker sort of love seat and the wreath and the rug. I also feel like maybe the owner of the house, the parents, they're a bit more structured. Everything has a place. So I wanted to show that this teen is a bit different in that respect too. So even the rug or rugs is a bit all over the place. At this point in the build, I'm starting to add in or finalize some details outside and moving on to planning out the backyard and landscaping. This might be a perfect time to mention something that's going on in the Sims community that you may not have heard about. EA, or Electronic Arts, the publisher of The Sims, announced last year that they'd be going private in a $55 million sale later this year. This probably doesn't sound too important, especially if you don't pay attention to businessy things. But I promise you, this is a big deal in a few ways. First, we've become very accustomed to The Sims and the developers' openness and how they make it a point to bring much needed representation to underrepresented groups. That's not just limited to packs, too. They've made a lot of updates to the base game that introduce players to customs and traditions from other real-life players who may not see representation like this elsewhere. It might sound like a small thing, but representation is extremely important, especially right now and in the gaming space. And The Sims has been making it a point to do this in their updates and packs. The buyers in this sale, though, they may not share these same values. They might be more conservative. They might even just tell the Sims team, stop. Even worse, they could remove a lot of the representation that has been added to The Sims 4 that makes the game so good. Do I know for sure that this will happen? No, of course not. But it could. And after looking into the buyers myself, I'm not confident that they wouldn't make these sort of changes. Second, This sale is technically something called a leveraged buyout, and it could end up being the largest leveraged buyout in history. That could, and likely would, mean that we'll see EA publishing less great and innovative titles while being hit with more aggressive monetization schemes. You know, kind of like The Sims 4's newest edition, the marketplace. Here's a tiny bit of good news, though. Members of the US Congress have already called upon the Federal Trade Commission to do a thorough review of this acquisition before it officially passes. In the meantime, though, I urge you to do your own research and tell your local representatives, Electronic Arts, and The Sims know your position. I'm also going to put a link in the description to a petition by Players Alliance on Action Network, which hopes to block the EA deal. With all of that said, I do also need to be transparent about a few things specific to my relationship with The Sims and EA. I have been a part of the EA Creator Network and a Sims partner since 2023, which, for a smaller creator like me, is a really big thing. You may have noticed that a lot of bigger Sims creators may have stepped away from these programs, some even boycotting the newer releases or even the game entirely. That's because of this acquisition. I've decided to continue making Sims content because I have come to love this game, and being a Sims partner is still such a new thing to me and was something I worked really hard for. As a Sims partner, I've received packs for free, some with early access, which is the reason why you see that watermark in the corner of this video. I'm not paid to play the game or even have to give a glowing review each time a new pack releases, but I've decided to stay in the program and continue using this opportunity to help you decide if a pack is worth your money or not. If things change, like this acquisition goes through officially, I'll reconsider my stance then. However, I do need to let you know that I also have a creator code, Teknikolour, that you can use when checking out on the EA app. Each time my code is used in a purchase on pretty much any EA title, I do receive a small commission from EA. As a smaller creator, this is a big help to me. Plus, you, as a consumer, can receive a discount on packs for The Sims 4, specifically whenever you use my code. Still, given what I've said already, you may not want to support EA or The Sims right now. And that is totally okay and understandable. I just needed to be clear about my relationship and how my code works. Oh, and if you choose not to support them, but still want to support me in some way, well, good news, you're already doing so just by watching this video. Hitting the like button, commenting, sharing, stuff like that helps way more than people realize because it pushes my content out to even more people. I see you and I appreciate you. Anyways, for this lot as a whole, I wanted to play around a bit more with terrain paint instead of just flooring or anything like that outside. So figuring out exactly how I wanted to lay out the backyard specifically was fun because I typically put flooring or whatever down first, and then I decide where to put the items. In this case, I placed the items down first and then put the terrain paint down around them. I also used this time to decorate the porch with a couple of items and then to work on landscaping around the house. This lot is kind of interesting because it's bordered on two sides with trees, the same tree, and they're basically in a set formation. So the other two sides, we're able to design that as we see fit. But it sort of felt odd to me because of those two sides with trees. I also wanted to maybe use one of those trees, but it now felt weird to use anywhere near that border. As for other landscaping, it was pretty straightforward, and I used a combination of shrubs, trees, and flowers to make something that looks like it fits in with the rest of the neighborhood, but also fits this house. Now we're back in the house, and I'm starting to put window coverings up, which, if I'm being honest, is kind of always a struggle when I'm limiting packs, especially if I'm not using my first pet stuff. I swear, the blinds from that pack are the best for window coverings, or the Desert Luxe kit. I just don't really love a lot of the window coverings in the game. We need better options. This is also when I finally decided to add wallpaper and flooring, and then that sort of dictated if I felt like I needed to add more wall items or art. I usually also use this stage of builds to decide on things like mailboxes, trash cans, and lighting. So I'll switch out those overhead puck lights for more thoughtful overhead lighting if I need. I'm also realizing right now, in real time, that this was actually a pretty perfect build, given that Easter was last weekend and we're in spring now. The pastels. Oh God, now I have the TikTok sound stuck in my head and probably yours now too. I'm sorry. But we're basically at the end of the speed build right now. So let me open the game and give you a quick tour. Okay, so here we are in Innisgreen, and this is the lot that I built. I'm gonna tell you, I really like the way that this one came out because just like the colors and everything, it just feels like it fits in perfectly with the rest of this neighborhood. I was definitely going to add a debug car here, I'm remembering now, but apparently never got to that point. And then you have the backyard out here with the grill and a telescope. But heading inside with an aerial view, you can see you just head straight up these porch steps and then you enter directly into the living room. And I love this room. I feel like it's very cute and it's just like very like bright and airy. And then you obviously have this room, which is the first one off to the side. And that is, of course, the teens' room. There's the main bathroom for everyone. And then you have the kitchen over here, which I don't know. I really like this. I think it looks really cute. And I just love that it like looks out into the yard. And then that door obviously leads us to the sort of laundry / mudroom. And that brings us outside. And then, of course, the primary bedroom in the back of the house with its own ensuite bathroom and little toilet room back here. And that is the entire build. If you enjoyed this video, please drop me a like and then grab the build off of the gallery. To add it to your game, you can find it using my EA ID, Teknikolour. If you'd like to see more of my builds and other cozy gaming videos, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss out on future uploads. If you want even more Sims content, consider dropping me a follow over on Twitch. I live stream my pack-based legacy challenge every Thursday, but play other cozy games throughout the week. Planning on picking up Enchanted by Nature or any other packs? Please use my creator code, Teknikolour, when checking out on the EA app. It's free for you and supports the channel. Plus, my code can now be used on so many other EA titles, not just The Sims, though that discount only applies for Sims 4 packs. But thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye-bye.